Mama told me there'd be days like this. After things were blossoming with our U.S. men's national team players in Europe, a rough couple days, which has seen our four guys in the Champions League on Italian teams out. And we also got the news of Gio Reyna apparently reaching the end of his time at Borussia Dortmund, which is bittersweet news because he needs to get out of there. So we're going to do a bit of an emergency show here on the Soccer OG. Like and subscribe to the show. Smash that like button. Subscribe. Let's get to 5,000 subscribers. I appreciate all the support. We will talk about Americans abroad. We will talk about MLS. We'll talk about World Cup. I'm ready for it all. And I encourage you all to leave a comment in the page, and we can have some discourse, which I always enjoy. So let's get into this. Tuesday, AC Milan seemingly 1 foot into the Champions League round of 16. An incredible first half as they were beating Feyenoord pillar to post, and then in the second half, it all fell apart, meaning Christian Pulisic and Musah were out in a pretty significant surprise result. I know AC Milan is not Real Madrid or even Inter when it comes to the Champions League, but still they were expected to advance. And then Juventus, who held a aggregate lead, again against a Dutch opponent, PSV, the second half. I mean, interesting that both of these games, the second half, the Italian clubs completely wilted. I'm not saying there is a trend there, but these were carbon copies of matchups against teams from the Dutch Eredivisie. And then PSV saw it out and took control of that game over 120 minutes. And they moved on to the round of 16, leaving the Serie A with one team in the final 16. Remember, just a couple years ago, they had a finalist. They had, 2-3 semifinalists. It was unbelievable. I should have had that information here. And that led to the coefficient of the Serie A going through the roof, because the Serie A is a big part of why I wanted to do this show here and kind of get that part off my chest. So everyone's telling me that the Serie A is the best league in the world. And I don't want to really argue it, because on the surface, if there is Champions League success, then it has a case. You look at even the teams that, first through seventh or eighth in the Serie A, when you include the Champions League teams. And by the way, Atalanta knocked out by Club Brugge, a team from Belgium. So Atalanta, Milan, Juventus, Inter, Napoli, many teams that you would spend money and are ambitious and have a lot of clout in the world's game. But after Tuesday and Wednesday, the computer coefficient, or the experts who say the Serie A is the best league in the world, well, after Tuesday and Wednesday, it resides below the Dutch Eredivisie. I don't think there's any other way to spin it. And I'm not taking a shot at Dutch football. They are having a triumphant moment. And I'm not actually saying that if I was to rate the leagues, the Italian league would be behind the Dutch league. But what I am saying is that the Serie A is far from the best league and far from perfect. I have covered the Serie A all the way back to its glory years, where it was unquestionably the best league, because it was the first league to really incorporate South American players. It started to incorporate African players outside of the French league, but they were, the big stars were there. It was Lazio, it was Parma. I mean, Gabriel Batistuta, unquestionably the best striker in the world, played for Fiorentina, which wasn't one of the top teams. Player after player, the Serie A was the sexiest league. But then it had issues, it had scandals, and it hasn't fully recovered, from Calciopoli to so many others. And when it starts, I'm giving a bit of a thesis here on Italian football. When it starts to emerge and things are going well, it flattens again. And I'm not saying they're in the midst of a scandal, but there's something about the way Italian football does its business, Italian culture does its business, that prevents it from reaching the heights that it once had. I wonder if it's possible, if it can ever reach those heights. I think foreign investment helps, and we'll see that. I tend to believe they can. And this is a minor speed bump. There's no reason for alarm. But I just preface this conversation because when people say to me the Serie A is the best, or Christian Pulisic should sign a 10-year deal at AC Milan. I'm like, wait a minute. Let's not forget the past. And some things coming up about Christian Pulisic that we will discuss. AC Milan has been far from a model club. It has really suffered for being one of the 4 or 5 big names in world football. It has not reached that on the field. It hasn't touched those other names that we mentioned, like Barcelona, Real Madrid, Manchester United. It hasn't touched those, Liverpool. So, when people say all is well in the kingdom and AC Milan is this and that, and yeah, they have an incredible roster, but you still see these flaws, and it continues to stub their toe. So, just wanted to mention that about the Serie A. So, it will, they'll regroup, but it's going to be tough this season with only one team in the final 16. That is Inter. They had a bye. I would be surprised if Inter gets past the quarterfinals, just because a reflection of the league is really comprehensive normally in these situations. And it has one team. The Dutch league has 2. It has the same amount as the Belgian Jupiler League. So the Serie A has to put its tails, swallow its pride and bite its tongue here for the remainder. And we'll watch the Serie A, but man, it's going to be a bit empty with all these promises of the Champions League. So what does it mean for the American players? Let's start here. There was a report of Football Italia. I saw it. It was squashed by Christian Pulisic, saying that he wanted to leave. He was having issues with Sergio Conceição. Christian Pulisic came out and squashed those reports, saying he's never argued and that he wants to stay with AC Milan. You see Christian Pulisic, he seems thrilled to be there, but that depends on a lot of things. Happiness can turn quickly. It's hard to maintain. You got to work very hard, and new factors come into it which can affect your happiness there. And I think Sergio Conceição arriving there certainly has been one of them. Christian Pulisic was benched for a couple games after he came from injury. He's had a very rocky 6 to 7 weeks after being the best player constantly. And you could still argue he's the best player. AC Milan in the marketplace, the winter market, were as active as anyone. They brought in Kyle Walker. They brought in João Felix. They brought in Santi Jimenez. Yes, they lost to Feyenoord. So they got the best player from Feyenoord, put him on their team. He scored, and they still lost, AC Milan. Bad optics. So they bring in these players, and when push comes to shove, Christian Pulisic gets hooked, comes out at the hour mark, and João Felix, who has been given chance after chance after chance, was picked by Sergio Conceição to save AC Milan's season. To save it. And even Santi Jimenez was pulled out. I don't understand it. I think João Felix is a tremendous talent, but I'm sick of seeing him get chances. He doesn't deserve them. So here we are. That is not a good optic. So as happy as Christian Pulisic says he is, I don't believe it entirely. I think this report was put out there maybe by agents or what have you, and maybe to press it a little bit. But again, especially now with no Champions League, less games to give to guys, and you have a loaded roster, what happens if João Felix gets the next few games? Clearly, Sergio Conceição brought him in for a reason. And they're not direct competitors when it comes to the position. They can play together, and we saw that at the beginning of the game against Feyenoord. But there are cracks, I think. I hope that they get sealed, but the history of the Serie A, as I got into it, gives me pause, and I get worried. Yunus Musah is the other one on AC Milan. Clearly a Sergio Conceição favorite. I'm not as worried about him, but I'm not happy that he's not getting the Champions League. Let's swing over to Juventus. And I want to also mention this because a lot of, I don't want to make it sound like I'm excusing the American players from blame here for the elimination. I'm not saying, hey, the Americans are not to blame. Blame all the other players for the elimination of the Champions League. But I will say, Yunus Musah has been excellent. Christian Pulisic, outside of these last couple of weeks, has been arguably AC Milan's best player. Weston McKennie's been given the armband for Juventus. Tim Weah had a cracking goal. He is playing more and more. If there was a list of players to blame, I don't want to do that, these guys would be far from the bottom or from the top of the blame list. So, I don't know. It's puzzling for sure with regards to that. And, I don't want to blame the Americans. It wasn't, they did their part if you look at the cross of this. So, regardless of who is to blame, none of their Champions League will continue. And they were both beaten by teams they should have beaten. The Dutch league is a big-time selling league and has had very little success outside of that Ajax run to the semifinals a few years ago. So this is excellent. And I will say, PSV have Americans. Richie Ledesma played. All the others are injured. Hopefully at least one. I don't think it's going to be Pepe, who can maybe make up by the time. I don't know if they're going to get through the round of 16. So I doubt any Americans will play for PSV. I'll have to check that injury list. But this isn't great with the Nations League on the horizon. This is a bonus to play in the round of 16. It is rarefied air. But we had this opportunity to have 4 Americans not only participating, but playing key roles. If Juventus and AC Milan made the round of 16, all 4 of them would be playing in those games. And now they can't bring that to the U.S. men's national team, incubator, to bring all of that. That's a miss. I mean, it's a bonus, but it's a miss. So we'll see how it affects the Nations League. I think these guys are going to come up fired up. The big thing I'm looking is that things don't take a toll on their club because of that. I'm worried about Christian Pulisic of the 4 because of some of the signs that we have seen. And just to remind you, things can go sideways quickly. Do want to touch on Gio Reyna very quickly here. The reports are out that his time at Dortmund will be coming to an end. Thank goodness. Wednesday, Dortmund clearly already in the round of 16. He came in for a few minutes, and I mean, even that tells you all you need to know, right? Because you're up 3-0 on Sporting. At the halftime, you give him 45 minutes so he can run around, and maybe Dortmund says that he's in their plans, but practice what you preach. Clearly, if he was in your plans and your passage to the next round is sealed and you don't play him, it needs to happen. This divorce needs to happen. It's gone far enough. What happens with Gio Reyna? He should stay in Europe. I thought to myself, maybe if he's not playing between now, if we could go retroactively, maybe he could do a quick 6-month loan to MLS. I mean, it'd be weird, but at least he'd play. But I think that's certainly off the table now. And he will see out these next awful 4 or 5 months at Dortmund and move. And this is it. I know Gio Reyna is a young player, but with regards to how it's gone at Dortmund, which the body of work below average, if not poor, certainly the last 2 years, really poor. You look at the spell at Nottingham Forest, that went horribly. You look at what happened at the 2022 World Cup, that could not have gone much worse. We can't keep blaming other people. This is on Gio Reyna. And people are getting frustrated. I'm getting frustrated. I want the very best from him. He's been getting some bad advice along the way from whomever is there. And it has to be perfect for him. But clearly, fool me once, fool me twice, fool me 3 times. And I'm not. Listen. He's been non-existent with the national team. Hopefully, he'll be back there now that he's healthy. Injuries are another part of all of this. But Gio Reyna, this is on you, my friend. I hope for the best, but I mean, everything I can see is bad. Everything I've seen, and I'm not going to see. And we can champion you, but let's go. Find a coach you can impress and take it from there. So we'll have better shows. Had to get this off my chest. It wasn't great, but we'll be back. The Soccer OG. Like and subscribe. Let's get to 5,000 subscribers. We'll be back. MLS season kicks off this weekend. A lot to look forward to.